My boyfriend told 50 people our baby isn't his, started a group chat poll with his brother on who I slept with, then announced a DNA test at a barbecue. His mom hugged him, his sister filmed me, now they're all begging me to please just talk to us. I was standing on the deck of his mother's house in Oceanside, California, with the smell of burnt hot dogs and cheap fireworks hanging in the air, when my boyfriend, my partner of 3 years, the father of the child growing inside me, lifted his red Solo cup, tapped a spoon against it for attention, and said loudly enough for every clumped-together relative to hear, "I'm getting a DNA test. Gotta expose this lying girl before she traps me." For a second, the world didn't register the words. I heard them, but they didn't settle. It was like someone had ripped the sound out of a speaker and thrown it at my chest. Then 50 pairs of eyes turned toward me, some confused, some entertained, most judgmental. His mom was the first one to move. She stood up from the picnic table she'd been hunched over, wiping her hands on her apron like she'd just been waiting for this moment. She wrapped him in a hug and said, loud enough that the neighbors probably heard, "I'm so proud you're not letting her trap you like your father." People murmured, nodded, looked at me like I'd just been caught stealing something. His uncle, already drunk off whatever he'd been hiding in his thermos, started a slow clap, actual applause, for humiliating me. His sister turned her phone toward me, recording. "This is for the family group chat," she said, like my shock was a comedy bit they'd been rehearsing. I remember touching my stomach without realizing it, like I needed to protect the baby from the words hitting me harder than the sun ever could. I tried to speak, but my throat closed. Everything inside me felt hot and trembling. Then I heard him, my boyfriend, the man who kissed my forehead that morning, laugh with his cousins. Laugh, like this was all some joke I signed up for. I pushed through the crowd and walked inside the house, trying to breathe, trying not to cry where anyone could see. That's when his friends followed me into the kitchen. 5 of them, all guys he knew from work and from the gym he basically lived at. They cornered me like they'd been waiting for their turn. "So which one was it?" one of them asked. Another added, "His brother, or that dude you work with at the clinic." A third guy smirked. "We saw the poll, you know." 15 guys, and like half of them said they'd bet it was someone else's baby. Their girlfriends leaned against the counter, scrolling their phones, chiming in with little snickers and comments like, "Come on, just admit it, and it's so obvious." I felt the room tilt. I didn't even know about the poll yet. I didn't know he'd put my name and my pregnancy into a group chat like it was some bar trivia question. I just stood there, holding onto the fridge handle to keep myself steady while they ripped into me. I walked out. Didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't defend myself. I just left. I found my car keyed in the driveway, cheater carved deep enough that white metal showed under the paint. I drove home with my hands shaking so badly I almost pulled over twice. When I got upstairs to my apartment and checked my phone, I saw 33 unread messages from him, all frantic. "Please answer. We didn't mean it. Call me. Baby, please." But the one that made my stomach twist was the last one. "We need to talk before things get worse." I stared at it, and for the first time since the barbecue, I felt something colder than shock settling in my chest. Something that wasn't fear. Something that felt like the beginning of an answer. I met Mason 3 years ago in a parking lot behind the urgent care clinic where I worked reception. He was leaning against his old Tacoma, eating a burrito the size of a newborn, waiting for his sister to finish her appointment. He made me laugh that day, really laugh, the kind that shakes something loose inside you. At the time, I needed that. I was 24, newly relocated to Oceanside, and still trying to outrun the pieces of my old life scattered across Bakersfield like debris from a wreck I never wanted to talk about. But the truth is, the reason his words cut so deep at that barbecue is because they scraped against wounds that weren't fully healed. The first wound was my ex, Tyler. We dated in college. He cheated so casually it felt like breathing to him, DMs, coworkers, friends of friends. But the worst part wasn't the cheating. It was how he convinced everyone that I was the unstable one. When I finally left him, he told people I'd been around, that he never knew who was really texting her. I found out months later he'd even told his mom I was dangerous. That word stuck to me like tar. The second wound came right after I moved to Oceanside. I barely knew anyone, and I was lonely enough that a coworker named Elise became my lifeline. She invited me everywhere: beach bonfires, brunch, late-night drives. I trusted her instantly. Too fast. One night after a party, she pulled me aside and said, "Just a warning, there are already rumors about you at work. Some people think you're a little flirty." I had never so much as looked at anyone there, but she said she'd heard it from multiple guys, and she wanted me to know my reputation. I found out later she was the one who started it, all because a guy she liked talked to me for 5 minutes about insurance forms. She quit 2 months later, and the rumor died down, but it left this quiet fear in me that people could paint me as something I wasn't, and no matter what I said, it wouldn't matter. So when Mason came into my life, so gentle and steady and sure, it felt like a clean slate. He wasn't college party careless or workplace gossip petty. He was consistent. He showed up. He listened. He didn't treat my past like a warning label. But then came the cracks. The first time, 6 months in, he asked why my ex had called me a cheater on Instagram. I told him the truth. He said he believed me, but then, a week later, he made a joke about me having options. I brushed it off. The second time, he mentioned that one of his friends thought I was too friendly with the guys at the gym. I didn't even go to his gym. Still, I apologized without knowing what for. The third time, after I told him I was pregnant, he went quiet for 2 hours. When he finally spoke, the first thing he asked was, "You're sure it's mine, right?" I was stunned, but he said it was just panic talking. I wanted to believe him so badly I let it go. Looking back, those moments weren't cracks, they were signposts. They pointed straight to the version of him I saw at that barbecue, the one who didn't hesitate to destroy me publicly to soothe his own insecurity. And as I sat in my apartment that night, reading those unread messages, I realized something. Mason's betrayal didn't start that afternoon. It started a long time ago. I just wasn't willing to see it. But now I saw everything. I ignored Mason's messages for 2 days. Not because I was trying to punish him, but because every time his name lit up my phone, something inside me recoiled like I was touching a hot stove. I spent those 48 hours lying still, letting the shock drain out and something harder settle in its place. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even reach out to my friends, what few I had. I just stayed quiet and thought. And when I finally read all the messages he sent, I saw exactly what I expected. Panic, excuses, begging, and then this sudden pivot into anger when I didn't respond. He cycled through the whole emotional spectrum like he was auditioning for sympathy. But the tone that stuck with me most was the ninth message he sent. Everyone got carried away. You know, I didn't mean it like that. Like it was a misunderstanding. Like I'd imagined 50 people turning on me. Like my car hadn't been keyed. Like his entire friend group hadn't cornered me in a kitchen and dissected my character like carrion birds. The silence between each message felt like oxygen returning to my lungs. The longer I stayed quiet, the clearer my mind got. I started replaying the barbecue moment by moment. The way he grinned when his mom praised him. The way he looked proud, not ashamed. I thought about how fast that poll must have started circulating. How willing he was to reduce my pregnancy to a spectacle for his friends to vote on. And then I asked myself the question I hadn't been brave enough to ask before. What kind of man does that? By the third day, my fear had transformed into something steadier. A kind of cold awareness. I didn't know yet what to do with it, but I knew I wasn't going to fold into myself like I had with Tyler or Elise. Not this time, so I started with small steps. I called my clinic manager and took a week off. She approved it after hearing my voice crack once. I guess she assumed it was pregnancy stress. I didn't correct her. Then I changed the locks on my apartment. I didn't owe Mason an explanation, and he didn't deserve access to my space ever again. When the locksmith handed me the new keys, I felt this strange sense of grounding, like something was finally, physically mine again. Next, I blocked Mason's friends on every platform. Every single one of them. Even the girlfriends who laughed instead of speaking up. I didn't want their names anywhere near my notifications. That alone felt like disinfecting my life. The turning point, though, the moment something in me truly shifted, came the evening I checked my voicemail. I expected Mason's voice. Instead, I heard his brother. His younger brother, Evan. The same one Mason had apparently included in that disgusting group poll. His message was short. "Hey, I'm really sorry about everything. I didn't vote. Just call me back if you want to know what actually happened." The word actually hung there long after the audio ended. I didn't call him back right away, but the message told me something important. There was more to the story than what I'd seen at the barbecue. Something underneath the humiliation, something hidden in the group chat or the planning or the timing. Because Mason wasn't impulsive. He rehearsed his moments. He liked an audience, and I realized then that what happened on the 4th of July wasn't a slip, it was built, constructed, coordinated. That was the moment a different version of me took over. Someone who wasn't just hurt. Someone who wanted answers. Someone who quietly was beginning to want justice. And I could feel myself moving toward it, step by step, without hesitation. I didn't hear from Mason again for 3 more days, which should have felt like relief, but instead it left a hollow pressure in my chest, like the quiet before a storm. I kept circling back to his brother's voicemail. "If you want to know what actually happened." It played in my mind on a loop until finally, late on a Thursday night, I called him. He answered on the first ring. His voice was shaky, like he'd been waiting with the phone in his hand. "Thank you for calling back," he said. "I know you don't owe me anything." I didn't say anything. I waited. And then the twist I never saw coming hit me from the other end of the line. "None of this was about the baby," he said. "Mason already got a DNA test before the barbecue." My breath snagged. "What do you mean he already?" "He got one last month," Evan said. "He did it behind your back. He swabbed one of your prenatal vitamins and sent it in with his own sample. He got the results 2 weeks ago." "The baby is his." For a second, I thought I misheard. My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles ached. "That doesn't make sense," I said. "If he already knew, he did it because of the job," Evan cut in. "He didn't want anyone thinking he settled down. It's some image thing he's been obsessed with since he started working under that new regional manager. He's been bragging to everyone in the friend group about how he wasn't going to let a woman lock him down the way Dad locked down Mom." Something cold washed through me. "He knew the baby was his," I repeated quietly. "He knew, and he planned the whole thing," Evan said. "The poll, the jokes, the barbecue announcement. He wanted out without being the bad guy. He thought if he humiliated you enough, you'd dump him and he'd look like the victim. He told everyone you'd been acting off since you got pregnant. He said he was 99% sure the baby wasn't his, even though he had the results in his truck the whole time." I felt nauseous. My stomach twisted so sharply I had to sit down on the floor. The tiles were cold under my legs. "Mason said if you left him before the baby came, he wouldn't have to deal with custody stuff," Evan added quietly. "That's why he pushed it so far." I swallowed hard. "And the group chat? He hyped everyone up," Evan said. "Told them it was just dark humor, that you wouldn't care. Some of them didn't want to do it, but he kept pushing. He wanted an audience when he humiliated you. He wanted proof he was trapped." My pulse was pounding in my ears. This wasn't insecurity. This wasn't a moment of panic. This wasn't even cruelty born of fear. This was strategy. This was a man trying to manipulate the narrative of his entire life, even if it meant burning me alive in front of his family. "You said he has the results?" I asked. "Yes, in his glove compartment. He showed me and Mom before the barbecue so we'd understand better. Mom told him not to tell you right away. She wanted to see if you'd confess." My mouth went dry. His mother hugged him after he lied. She congratulated him for humiliating me even though she already knew the truth. It wasn't one person who betrayed me. It was all of them. "Why are you telling me this?" I whispered. "Because I saw your face that day," Evan said. "And because someone should tell you the truth before he finds a new way to flip the story." My heartbeat steadied. My breath evened. For the first time since the barbecue, I didn't feel dizzy or scared. I felt anger sharpening into clarity, into intention. This wasn't just personal anymore. This was war. After I hung up with Evan, I sat on my living room floor in the dark for a long time. No music, no TV, just the hum of the refrigerator and my own breath coming slower and steadier with every minute. My hands were still shaking, but not from fear. This time it was from the sheer, crystalline precision forming in my mind. Mason hadn't just embarrassed me. He hadn't just questioned my fidelity or my pregnancy. He had premeditated a character assassination. He had staged it. Scripted it. Produced it like some sick performance designed to paint me as the villain while he walked away the misunderstood hero. But here's the thing about men like Mason. They rely on the assumption that the woman they're destroying is too shocked to fight back. Too devastated, too tired, too pregnant, too something. He didn't plan for the version of me sitting on that floor. I didn't rush into anything. That was the first rule I made for myself. No impulsive lashing out, no screaming matches, no sending screenshots out of anger. If Mason wanted strategy, then strategy was exactly what he'd get, but on my terms. So I started with information. First, I called the lab listed in his browser history, the one he'd used for the DNA test he tried to hide from me. Evan was right. The test had been processed weeks earlier. The representative couldn't disclose results to me, but she confirmed Mason as the listed client and confirmed the date. It was enough. It proved he'd known long before the barbecue. Next, I documented everything. Photos of my car keyed with cheater, screenshots of the group chat poll, Evan sent them, every last one, timestamps, the voicemail from Mason's mother telling him she knew the truth would come out, and even a saved copy of Mason's messages begging me to talk before things get worse. He didn't realize how damning his wording was. After that, I contacted a lawyer, one recommended by a coworker who'd quietly dealt with her own custody nightmare. The consultation fee stung, but the lawyer didn't flinch when I told her the story. She listened, took notes, and then said the words that changed the entire trajectory of my plan. He wanted to manipulate the custody narrative before the child is even born. That's abuse, and it matters. And if he's already demonstrated willingness to lie about paternity publicly, a judge will care about that. That was when the cold sense of purpose fully clicked into place. I wasn't going to scream at Mason. I wasn't going to show up at his house. I wasn't even going to respond to his texts. I was going to dismantle the image he cared so much about, methodically, quietly, legally. But the real plan started when I thought about what Mason valued most. Not me, not the baby, not even the relationship. He valued perception. His reputation at work, his position with that new regional manager. His status among his friends, his family's approval. Those 4 pillars held up the version of himself he was trying to protect when he tried to ruin me. If I wanted justice, real justice, I needed to pull on one pillar at a time until the whole structure collapsed. I started by drafting a timeline for my lawyer, attaching screenshots and evidence. Then I wrote something I hadn't expected to write, a formal statement for Mason's HR department outlining his coordinated harassment, defamation, and misconduct. Not to send yet, but to prepare. Finally, I wrote a message to Evan, "I need one more thing from you." He responded immediately, "Whatever you need." I hesitated before typing back because what I asked for would shift everything into motion. But I asked anyway. I needed the full group chat messages, every comment, every vote, every joke Mason made while he pretended to doubt his own child's paternity. When Evan agreed to send them, I felt something inside me settle. The plan was forming, clean, surgical, precise, and Mason had no idea what was coming. Evan sent the group chat screenshots the next morning. I thought I was prepared. I thought I'd built enough emotional armor to handle whatever those messages contained. I was wrong. The screenshots came in one long, continuous thread, hundreds of messages. At first it was the poll, just like he told me. 15 guys joking, betting, throwing out names of men I barely knew. Some of them I'd never even met. Then there were the comments Mason added himself, goading them on, saying he deserved to know who she really slept with, punctuated by laughing emojis and casual cruelty that didn't match the man I thought I lived with. But halfway through the thread, something shifted. The tone changed. And when I saw what he wrote, everything I thought I knew about why he did this snapped in half. At 10:13 p.m. the night before the barbecue, Mason wrote, "She's not even sure she wants to keep it. If she ends up getting rid of it, I'm not going down as the guy who pressured her. I need people to see who she really is first." My breath froze. The next message. "Mom said the same thing. If she decides not to have it, it'll look like my fault unless people already know she's been sketchy." My vision blurred for a second. Not from tears, those still wouldn't come, but from the sheer, sickening clarity of what I was reading. He didn't humiliate me to escape fatherhood. He humiliated me to preemptively protect himself in case I chose not to continue the pregnancy. He built a narrative where I was unstable, unfaithful, manipulative, a woman who couldn't be trusted, a woman whose decisions couldn't be taken seriously, a woman who would be blamed if anything happened. He was building a defense before there was even an accusation, but the worst part wasn't his plan. It was what came next. One of his friends asked, "Wait, did she say she might not keep it?" Mason responded, "Not in words, but she's been weird. Quiet. I can tell she's thinking about it, I'm just getting ahead of it." The truth hit me like a physical blow. I'd never said anything like that, not even hinted at it, but I had been quiet. I'd been tired and overwhelmed and scared. Completely normal, completely human reactions, and he had weaponized them. He twisted my silence into some imaginary threat he could use as a smokescreen for his own insecurity and ambition. He wasn't afraid the baby wasn't his. He was afraid I might have a choice, and he needed to destroy me before anyone believed my side of anything. I scrolled further, heart thudding, until I reached the message that made my whole body go cold. "If she leaves me over this, even better. Saves me the trouble, and if she does keep it, I've got proof she's not stable. Either way, I win. Either way, I win." I read that line again and again until my fingers went numb. Evan texted me separately after sending the screenshots. "I didn't know about these. I swear, I'm sorry." But the apology barely registered. Because that second twist, the real twist, landed with perfect clarity. Mason didn't just betray me. He didn't just humiliate me. He didn't just try to manipulate custody. He tried to manipulate my autonomy. He tried to control the narrative of my pregnancy so fully that no matter what choice I made, he would come out looking righteous. And worse, his mother helped him. All that time he claimed he was afraid I'd trap him, he'd been trying to trap me inside a story he scripted without my knowledge. My hands steadied. My breathing evened. Something inside me hardened into resolve strong enough to hold up a house. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was reclamation. And the plan I thought I was building, it had just shifted into something far more precise. Something far more devastating. Because now I knew exactly what kind of man Mason really was, and I knew exactly where to strike. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the glow of the street lamp leaking through my blinds, replaying Mason's messages over and over until each line carved itself into a different part of me. I kept asking myself the same question: why would he go that far? Why the performance? Why the public shaming? Why the strategic cruelty? But the answer didn't come from speculation. It came from his mother. She showed up at my apartment the next afternoon. I almost didn't open the door. But when I looked through the peephole and saw her standing there with her arms crossed like she'd come to check on a faulty appliance, not a human she'd helped humiliate, something in me ignited. I opened the door. She stepped inside without waiting for permission. "We need to talk," she said, her voice clipped, rehearsed. "Mason is devastated. He told me you're ignoring him and he's worried about the baby." She said the baby like it was a project gone off schedule. I didn't offer her a seat. I didn't speak. She took that as permission to keep going. "You have to understand," she said, brushing imaginary dust off her blouse. "Mason has always been vulnerable to being used. Women see how hardworking he is, how generous he is, and they take advantage. It happened to his father. It has happened to him before. He's terrified of repeating that pattern." I stared at her, waiting, because that was only the surface of whatever story she came here to pitch. Then her voice sharpened. This pregnancy was not part of his plan, and when a man has ambitions, and he does, real ambitions, he cannot get dragged down by someone who is unpredictable. My stomach tightened. Unpredictable. You barely know who you are from 1 week to the next, she said. No hesitation, no flinch. You moved here after some situation elsewhere. You have no family here, no foundation, no community. People like that cling. And they panic and they trap. She spoke like she'd been studying me under a microscope since the day we met. She continued, Mason told me about your emotional swings, the withdrawal. How you shut down after telling him about the pregnancy, how you made him feel unsure. She paused. And when a woman is unsure, she often starts looking for an exit she can blame on the man. My jaw tightened, but I still didn't speak. Mason couldn't risk that, she said, stepping closer. Not when he's finally getting his footing at work. Not when he has a chance at real advancement. If you had decided not to keep the baby, and with your history, he had every reason to believe you might, it would have destroyed him. People would have seen him as the man who failed yet another relationship. He deserved protection, and he took it. There it was. The truth so cold it almost numbed me. He didn't humiliate me because he doubted me. He humiliated me because if I made a choice he didn't like, he needed a pre-written explanation. A shield. A story that insulated his reputation and ambition from the fallout of my autonomy. His mother wasn't horrified by what he did. She was proud. She believed it was a man's right to get ahead of a woman's choices. A man's right to control the narrative of her body, her future, her pregnancy. You can choose to forgive him, she said, like she was offering me a coupon. But you need to understand he acted out of necessity. I finally spoke. What he did wasn't protection, I said quietly. It was cruelty. Her lips flattened. You think cruelty is worse than ruining a man's life? She asked. Women ruin men all the time. Mason just refused to be another casualty. There was no remorse, no doubt, only ideology. And in that moment, everything inside me crystallized. This wasn't insecurity. This wasn't panic. This was learned, taught, reinforced, passed down. Mason's reason was simple, chilling, and absolute. In his family, protecting a man's image mattered more than protecting a woman's dignity, autonomy, or humanity. And now that I understood the mindset that created him, I knew exactly how to dismantle him. Not through rage. Not through chaos, but through truth delivered in a way he could never outrun. Because if Mason cared more about his image than anything else, that was exactly where I needed to strike. I knew I couldn't humiliate Mason the way he humiliated me, not publicly, not theatrically, not in the cheap, showy manner he had chosen. That wasn't justice. That was noise, and noise fades. I needed something permanent. Something undeniable. Something that would stain the version of himself he clung to so desperately. So I waited 1 week. Quiet, calm, methodical, exactly the opposite of what he expected. I let him keep sending messages, some pleading, some defensive, some furious. I let his mother's voicemail sit unheard. I let his sister post her vague family drama memes on Instagram. I let his friends pretend they didn't participate. And then, on a Monday morning at 9:02 a.m., while Mason was clocked in at his job at the distribution center he bragged about constantly, my plan unfolded. I sent one email, just one. To his company's HR department, CCing the regional manager he was so desperate to impress. The subject line was simple: employee misconduct, documented pattern of defamation, harassment, and abuse. Inside, I attached every piece of evidence. Screenshots of the group chat poll he created to question the paternity of a child he already knew was his, the messages orchestrating my public humiliation, the texts admitting he wanted to get ahead of the story before I could make any decision about the pregnancy, the timeline showing how he coordinated others to participate, the fact that he used my medical information without consent for a DNA test, and finally, a short statement from my lawyer documenting emotional distress, reputational harm, and abuse related to reproductive decision-making. I didn't ask for anything in the email. I didn't demand he be fired. I simply presented the truth and copied the woman whose opinion determined his future. Then, at 9:17 a.m., I sent the same package to his family group chat. I didn't add a caption. I didn't justify myself. I didn't explain what they were looking at. I just let the raw evidence land in the same digital space where his sister had recorded my shock, where his mother had praised him, where his uncle had slow clapped. At 9:33, my phone started vibrating nonstop. Mason, why would you do this? His mother, you vindictive girl, this is disgusting. His sister, are you trying to ruin his life? Aunt Mary. I had no idea, I'm so sorry. Evan, I'm here if you need me. But I didn't respond. Their panic wasn't my responsibility. Around noon, Mason called 14 times. I blocked the number. 10 minutes later, he showed up at my apartment building, banging on my door so loudly the downstairs neighbor yelled at him. I didn't answer. I just stayed on the other side of the wall, listening to his voice break from rage into something like begging. Eventually, he left. 2 days later, Evan texted me, he's been placed on leave. The regional manager wants a full review. HR is investigating, mom's furious, dad's siding with you. Everything's bad here. Bad for them, maybe. But for me, everything was finally becoming clear. A week after HR opened their investigation, I filed for a restraining order. My lawyer handled everything. Mason didn't fight it. He couldn't, not with the evidence attached. 2 months later, I formally declined to add him to the birth certificate. The court agreed. Given his documented harassment and the DNA test he performed without my consent, he wasn't granted automatic paternity rights. He wanted freedom from responsibility. He got it, but not the way he imagined. The baby kicked for the first time the night after the court ruling. I sat in my quiet apartment, hand on my stomach, feeling that small, powerful movement. Not fear, not uncertainty, just presence. I thought about Oceanside, about the smell of fireworks, about a backyard full of people who cheered for my destruction. And for the first time since that day, the memory didn't burn. It just existed, like smoke that no longer stung. Mason lost the one thing he valued most, the version of himself he performed for everyone else. I didn't destroy him. He exposed himself. All I did was make sure the right people saw it. And when I finally closed my eyes that night, I felt something like closure. Not perfect, not pretty, but real.